Hello. I wouldn't do this with many topics, but as we begin memory, it's going to be quite useful for us to know, because we talk a lot about memory in ordinary life, it's going to be quite useful for us to know how psychologists define some of the words that we use very frequently. So this is going to be quite an unusual little talk, because I'll be describing words that you've probably used quite a lot, a couple that you haven't, but mostly words that you've used, and we'll be just making sure that we've got exactly the right definition. I've designed this talk to go along with and be easy to follow using the Cornell method of note-taking that we've just done earlier on in the lesson, if you're watching this in class. If you're not watching it in class, then obviously you need to go to the blog and have a look at the Cornell note-taking lesson that's on YouTube. Okay then, so we're looking at essential definitions, and we're going to use them, and we're going to be using them right through the whole memory topic, so it's important that we've got all of these clear. So by the end of the talk, you should have some notes with each of these key words down, and also have really clear definitions and examples for yourself so that you can explain them. To save time, also what I've done, and to make sure that they're absolutely perfect, is that I've drawn some diagrams to go along with these things, but to make sure that the diagrams are perfect, I've done them in advance. Okay, so let's have a look at our first definition. Our first definition is a memory store. So we often psychologists talk about us having different memory stores. And what a memory store is a place in your mind where your memories are kept until you need to find them. So the kind of example I've used here is we might think of the memory as like a filing cabinet. We put it in they might be quite nicely organized, or we might think of memory like a bucket where we chuck everything in, and it might be harder to find things. You can probably decide which kind of memory store best describes your memory. So it's a memory store. If you're using the Cornell note-taking method, this would probably be going on the left-hand side, and then you would have the definition in the main body of notes. Okay, next one. The sensory store. Now, psychologists believe that we've got lots of different different stores, and this is the first one, and this is the store where we actually save memories of everything that's happening to us at the moment. All the information we're receiving from your senses at this very moment is stored for a very brief time in your sensory store. So if you think now what you might be tasting in your mouth, what you can smell, the sounds and the words coming from around you, the sights that are around you. So everything from all of those stores are held in your sensory store. Quite amazing when you think about it. Just think of actually how much information is all present at any one moment in our memory store there. Okay. So the best way to do it, I could do if I do page down, let's see if that works. Oh. I mistakenly gave you a little sneak preview of this page. I hope it hasn't spoiled the surprise. Okay, so another important definition is short-term memory store. And as we're doing this during the World Cup, I've used a relatively relevant example. So this store holds information about things that have just happened. And when psychologists talk about short-term memory store, they talk about what's happened in the last couple of minutes, really. And so things that we remember from a couple of minutes ago. So this is what we hope to see as a short-term memory for people watching the World Cup this year. Unless, of course, we're German. The long-term memory store is one that holds information about things that have happened in the past, which is more than 2 minutes ago. And that could obviously be a long time ago. You might remember, for example, your first primary school teacher. You might remember losing a balloon when you went to the park or you went to a fair when you were very young. You might remember something you did last week. All of those things are information and all that information is held in our long-term memory store. I personally remember how much bigger Mars bars were in the 1980s when I was a very young boy. Okay, pushing on. Some other important terms. Now here is a term. This is one way of describing a memory store. We talk about memory store in terms of its capacity. And what psychologists mean by capacity is the amount, or often the number of units of information that a store can hold. So we might think that one type of memory might only have a small capacity, might only have a limited amount of things it can hold. Maybe another memory store might have a bigger capacity. You can probably be working that one out for yourself. Next one, duration. How long will a memory actually remain in a memory store? Now, in some memory stores, maybe that will only last for a very short time. But then again, we know, don't we, that we can remember things that go back a long way. Mrs. Rush-Dashford, for example, would remember stuff from 1960 when she was a teenager. Now, here's an important one, and it's quite an interesting idea. It's the idea of encoding, and this talks about the way a piece of information is stored in a store. So, for example, we might remember a word in the form of a sound, and that's called acoustic encoding. We might remember it as a picture, and that's known as visual encoding. So, if I say to you, close your eyes and see if you can remember what your front door looks like, you'll probably get a picture of what your front door looks like. If I ask you to remember a telephone number, and I told you that number, you might remember that by saying it to yourself over and over inside your head, and in that way you're saving it as a sound, and that would be called acoustic encoding. Have I said that's the right way around? I think I have. Okay, and here's and this is a kind of big picture word, this final one, and it's important that you understand this because we'll be talking about models of memory, and we need to know what a model is. Oh look, there's the question itself. What is a model? Now, a model is not an exact copy of something, but it's a representation of something. It helps us understand how something works. So, for example, here's a tube map. This is the London Underground, and it helps us understand how the tube works, and it helps us know where to get on and off stations. And so it helps very much with our understandings. But that is not an exact picture of what the tube looks like. So, for example, the stations on there might be much closer or further away than they look on that particular picture. Okay, what I would do now if I were you is I would look at my Cornell notes and I would fold them over so that I've got my definition words on one side, but the actual definition's covered up. And now test yourself. See how many of those you can repeat. So see what you've learned, check it against your notes, and then you'll know exactly what you need to review. You need to know by the next lesson exactly what each of those key terms that I've given you mean. Well, it's been nice chatting to you. I better get off now. I think it's nearly time to make dinner. See you later.